To me, this is one of the most important depictions of Jesus we have. When Jesus goes to pray on the Mount of Olives, we see the most vulnerable human Jesus. Throughout Luke, we see the holiness and divinity of Jesus. There are over a dozen healings in the Gospel of Luke. Jesus resurrects Jairus' daughter and resurrects the widow's son of Nain. Jesus is shown to have control over nature itself, as shown in the miracle where he has Simon catch so many fish that their boats sink. And then later, Jesus commands the wind and the waves to obey him when he's out on the boat with his disciples. And who can forget that timeless miracle where Jesus takes 5 loaves of bread and 2 fish and feeds 5,000. Throughout Luke, we see Jesus as Messiah, as Prince of Peace, as the Son of God and the light of the world, which makes this passage for today just so powerful. The man who casts out demons and heals a paralytic and gives sight to the blind. We've seen this man talk about a faith that can move mountains. It's this man we see here kneeling down and praying, "Father, if you are willing, remove this cup from me. Yet not my will, but yours be done." For week 5 of Lent, our theme word is surrender, surrendering to the promises of God. During seminary, Pastor Rockford was my district superintendent, meaning he was the eventual guy who would be helping provide my first appointment. And there's this reality that when candidates for ministry go away for seminary, the students can lose touch with their home conference. And when they're returning, the cabinet, the bishop, and the DS may not know fully their gifts and abilities because it's been 3 years. When I left, I had a mentor tell me, "Don't let your district superintendent forget you." And I took that seriously. So every semester around midterms, I'd email Rockford to check in, wishing him either a happy Advent or Lent, and then I'd share what I was learning in seminary. Then as the semester came to a close and I was preparing to return to Oklahoma over break, I'd email Rockford and ask for a face-to-face meeting. I didn't want him to forget me, never even imagining that one day he'd request me to be his associate. During those meetings when I was hoping to not be forgotten, Rockford has his own messages that he didn't want me to forget. The first half of our meeting would be catch-ups, seminary discussions around who I was reading, what I was writing about, and the kind of hot theological content of the day. The second half of our meetings would then shift to my understanding of my call, particularly as an elder in the United Methodist Church. And towards the end, he'd ask the time-tested question if I was still willing to surrender to the practice of itinerancy, of being sent where the bishop understood God was calling me to serve. I've been very fortunate in my calls. The churches I've served have been healthy and committed to discovering and sharing God's love, and I've loved where I've worked. But I always remember having late night conversations with Addison after meeting with Rockford and being asked if I would still surrender to God's call to go and serve wherever I was called. We talk about if Addison was willing to surrender herself and our eventual child and family to the call God would have, not just for me, but for my entire family. Now, had I known saying yes to surrendering to God's call in my life would lead me here to McFarlin, well, that'd be the easiest yes next to saying I do at my wedding. But in those moments as a 20-something-year-old, saying yes meant a whole lot of unknowns. What sustained me in wondering if I could say yes was going back to this scene in Luke 22 and the words of Jesus' prayer, "Not my will, but yours be done." Sometimes saying yes to God's amen is the easiest thing you can do. A lot of times surrendering to God's promises means giving yourself up wholly and fully, as the prophet Jeremiah records God saying, "Just like the clay in the potter's hand, so you are in my hand." We are forever thankful that our sacrifice and surrender is nothing compared to Jesus's. Yes, we are to surrender our lives to Jesus, and though we all bear our own crosses, Jesus promises us in John 10:10 that when we surrender to him, we might have life, and that we might even have it more abundantly. In all of our relationships, from our relationships with God, relationships between loved ones and family members, and parents and children, and relationships to our community, and all of our relationships, for them to work, to be healthy and reciprocal, They require surrendering. Maybe not total and complete, but we know that when we surrender for others and others sacrifice for us, the whole is greater than the sum of its parts. This reminds us that we all have a role to play, that when we all surrender, something powerful happens. That doesn't mean that surrendering is easy. The Son of God himself, who commanded nature and time after time performed the greatest of miracles, when it was his time to surrender to the promises of God, even Jesus needed the power of prayer and divine assistance to give him strength. As far as trials go, growing in your walk with Jesus, standing on the promises of God, strengthening our church's foundation, and building a mission center to share the love of God with more people, well, as far as trials go, for me, that's something I can earnestly and excitedly say, yes, your will be done.